Hey, this is Stephen A. Williams, president and founder of the creditrepairshop.com. In today's video, we're going to talk about that gray area that I've spoken about when a debt portfolio company buys your debt from the original creditor that you had a debt with. There's always been this gray area. People have complained that, okay, they called the original creditor that they had the debt with. Maybe the finances got better and they were like, hey, I want to try to resolve this. Maybe they're trying to buy a house, whatever reason. And they find that they cannot pay that original creditor. And so then it goes to the debt collector. And a lot of people complain saying that first they'll ask the original creditor, who owns the debt? Some of the times they will know, some of the times they won't. Well, where the debt goes is that they're portfolio buyers. Debt portfolio companies will buy the debt, and then they will distribute the debt either to their own companies where they try to protect the portfolio company just in case the debt collection company does something wrong and gets sued. They won't destroy their whole business. But another thing that can happen too is that they will just assign it, or they will sell it. They will sell it to another debt collection company because they're in the portfolio buying business. They'll put it out there for sale and sell it to the highest bidder. Well, now here's this gray area that I've talked about where people would call them and they're like, I cannot resolve this, and they didn't tell me who bought the debt. I'm waiting on them to try to figure out this thing. I need to be able to move forward in my life. And it could take up like a year, some people for 2 years, where they finally found out by getting a letter in the mail from a debt collector saying, hey, we bought your debt and we want you to pay it. That Dunning letter, that 30-day letter. Well, here is something that I think you should know about. This is very important. And I was always wondering, why did that gray area exist? Because if you think about it, they have to validate that debt. If a debt collection company has it, they have to do a debt validation according to the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. Well, let me tell you what happened with the Supreme Court. And you can look this up for yourself. Supreme Court Justice Gorsuch, his first opinion confirms exemption of debt buyers. Keyword, Gorsuch's first opinion confirms exemption of debt buyers from Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. So what does that mean? Here's the deal. When an original creditor tries to come after you for a debt that you owe them, there's certain things that they don't have to prove. Like, you can do a validation of debt, but that's not really what you would do with an original creditor. What you would do is you would just ask to get all the documentation to prove the amount that they claim that you owe. You do that with debt collectors, but you also do a validation with them having a debt, proving how they got it, all of that stuff. But when you're dealing with an original creditor, what you're really doing is just trying to put yourself into a position to be able to get a good settlement that both parties can move forward with. Well, what Gorsuch's opinion did with this, with what happened, and this actually happened in 2017. I was not aware of it. Learn something new every day. But with this opinion regarding debt buyers from the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, is what this whole thing, the bottom line of it comes down to, is that they do not have to be under the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act as long as they just bought the debt. But then when they sell it, they're still not under it, but the debt collection company who tries to collect the debt is under and has to abide by the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. But let me tell you where the door opens, where they, they try to hurt people and they end up helping people even more. This is where they really put themselves into a trap, is that if a debt portfolio company buys the debt and they assume the role of the original creditor, which we all know that when they assume the role of the original creditor, they take on all the responsibilities of proving that debt, of getting all that information about that debt. Now, even though they're exempt from the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act, but that's because they're not trying to collect on the debt. But when they sell it or assign it out to a debt collector, guess who has to come up with the paperwork to prove the claim? The portfolio company. Guess who doesn't have access to all of the records? The portfolio company. So does this make a third-party debt collection company actually the fourth party? Because if the debt portfolio company is assuming the role of the original creditor by buying that debt, and they don't have all of the information, they won't have all of the information because no original creditor is going to give some portfolio company everything that's internal about their records. They're going to just give some statements, as much of the consumer's information that they can legally by law, and sign an affidavit saying that they sold the whole portfolio, but they're not going to be specific about an individual in that portfolio. So it leaves a door wide open for you. So when the Supreme Court, which this was the conservative side of the Supreme Court who voted to allow this exemption for debt portfolio buyers, have actually made the door even wider open for you to be able to beat debt collectors at their own game. If you need help with your credit, please visit us at thecreditrepairshop.com. Watch video What Makes Us Different so you can learn about our process, about how we repair credit. If you need your credit reports and scores, go to the website your3scores.com to grab your TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian credit reports in all 3 scores. If you have debt collectors coming after you, grab my 3-pack of letters: statute of limitations letter, debt validation, and cease and desist collection activities letter. Also, before I close out, that might be the number one reason why when a portfolio company has your debt, they do not have to respond to a debt validation because they're exempt from the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. But we still know what door that we can open to be able to go after them when they sell that debt to a debt collector who tries to come after you. So grab my 3-pack of letters. I do ask for a donation if you decide to get them, but you don't have to. But it helps me monetize my time here on the channel. Thank you for your time. Please subscribe to the channel, post your questions and comments. I invite you to go look at that opinion. It was from 2017, and it just type in Gorsuch's first opinion confirms exemption of debt buyers from Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. Thank you for your time. This is Stephen A. Williams, President and founder of thecreditrepairshop.com.